This happened the summer I turned 17. It was supposed to be one of those carefree post-finals getaways. Just me and two of my closest friends, Kayla and Bree, celebrating the start of summer break. Kayla's uncle owned a cabin near a river in northern Idaho, and he offered to let us stay there for the weekend if we promised not to trash the place. It was isolated, surrounded by cliffs, pine trees, and cold mountain water. The perfect spot to get off the grid, float in the sun, and feel like the world didn't exist. We packed snacks, towels, Bluetooth speakers, and a few cheap inner tubes from Walmart to go tubing. The plan was to start upstream at a slow entry point, float for about 2 hours, and get out at a bend near the cliffs, where there was a clearing to climb back to the cabin trail. Kayla's uncle had done it dozens of times. He even dropped us off himself and showed us where to get out. It seemed safe. For the first 30 minutes it was. The sun was out, the current was just fast enough to be fun, and the water was cold but not miserable. We held onto each other's tubes with ropes and let the river carry us. At one point, we played music, joked about school, talked about the people we were glad we wouldn't have to see for 3 months. It felt perfect. But then the current started picking up. Not in a dramatic movie-style way, just subtle enough that we didn't notice at first. We passed some rocks faster than we expected. Then we hit a bend we didn't recognize, and then another. The rope between my tube and Kayla's snapped, and Bree, who was closest to the inside bend, got pulled toward the cliffside. The tubes hit some jagged rocks, and all three of us flipped. I still remember the sound Bree made when she hit the water, panicked, screaming for us, then cut off by the current. I went under too, smacking my leg on a submerged boulder, and when I surfaced, Kayla was already trying to swim to Bree, who had managed to grab onto a rock jutting out from the cliff wall. The current was ripping past her legs, and she was barely hanging on with both hands. Her arms were shaking, but her eyes were locked on us, terrified. Kayla reached her first, grabbed her wrist, but the current was brutal. I tried to push from the other side, to get some kind of grip, but the river felt like it wanted to peel the skin off my hands. Bree screamed that she couldn't hold on. She begged us to pull her up, but she was slipping. Then she lost her grip. I watched her fall, maybe 8 feet down, but the river dragged her instantly. We started running along the edge, yelling her name, looking for any sign of her. For a second, she resurfaced further downstream, coughing, flailing, and then disappeared around another bend. Kayla dropped to her knees, screaming. I've never seen someone shut down like that before. Her whole body just collapsed. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to go after Bree, but there was no trail, no safe way down, and my phone was in a waterproof bag that had floated off with the tubes. We eventually found our way back to the cabin, bloody, shaking, and sunburned. Her uncle called emergency services. They found Bree almost an hour later. She'd managed to wedge herself between 2 rocks near a shallow bend, face down but breathing. The fall broke her back. She was airlifted out and spent months in recovery. She survived. But everything changed after that. For almost 5 years, Bree was in a wheelchair. She went through surgeries, rehab, and depression that none of us really knew how to handle. Kayla never forgave herself, even though she was the only one who got to her in time at all. I stayed friends with both of them, but something about that weekend cracked us apart. We were never the same again. I still hear the moment her fingers slipped off that rock when I try to fall asleep some nights. I still remember the guilt on Kayla's face every time she looked at me afterward. Like we'd failed a test no one warned us we were going to take, and I haven't been tubing since, not once. This happened in 2011, and it still feels like it was yesterday. I was 10 years old when it happened, and I've spent over a decade wishing I could go back and stop it, but I can't. And that's what's slowly eating me alive. It was a hot July day. My mom had taken me and my younger brother Alex to a water park about an hour from our house. It wasn't some big-name park, just a decent one with enough slides and pools to keep kids happy. Alex was 6, hyper, always talking, always grabbing my arm and telling me to look at whatever bug or rock or weird thing he found. That day he wouldn't shut up about the wave pool. It was the only thing he wanted to do. We got there around noon. Mom laid out a towel on a lounger near the shallow end and told us to stick together while she kept an eye on us from the chair. She wasn't distracted. I need to make that clear. She wasn't on her phone, wasn't off talking to someone. She was watching. but the wave pool was huge, packed with people, and kids everywhere were running around like maniacs. At first, we stayed near the shallow end, but after a while, Alex wanted to go out further, where the water got deep and the waves were bigger. I was hesitant, but I was the older brother. I felt like I was supposed to let him try, as long as I stayed close. So, we went in deeper. I remember he was laughing, trying to jump with the waves, and then I saw a man in the pool. He had on a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses. Something about him felt off. He was too still, too calm, and he was watching Alex. Then the loud horn sounded throughout the entire water park to prepare for the incoming wave. The rush of the wave came, and I held Alex's hand. But because we were closer, the force of the water pushed us apart. When I came up, Alex was gone. I looked under the water, expecting him to pop up laughing or calling my name, but he didn't. Panic set in very fast as I shouted for him. I ran to the edge and yelled for my mom. She was already halfway into the water before I even got there. We searched, and lifeguards got involved quickly. Within minutes, the whole pool was cleared. They checked the water, but couldn't find him. I mentioned the man I saw earlier, and they went searching for him, but came back with no one. I kept trying to tell them about the guy I saw, how I thought I saw him move toward Alex just before the wave. I even pointed to where he was standing, but they just told my mom and me that they couldn't find him. Once the police came, that whole area was closed off. The workers searched for a couple more hours while the police searched the perimeter and a few miles out. But in the end, it was still nothing. They reported Alex as a missing child and continued to investigate, but never made any promises after 24 hours. They never found him. Not that day, not ever. My mom's life shattered into pieces after that. So did mine. I had to grow up in a house that used to echo with laughter and toys and dumb arguments over cereal, now replaced with silence, and a bedroom that was never touched again. His shoes stayed by the door for years. I could never get that man's face out of my head. Him watching Alex. I spent years thinking of what I should have done. I should have grabbed Alex's arm, should have told him not to go deeper in the wave pool, should have gotten out of the pool entirely. I was 10. But even now, I don't forgive myself. Because whoever took my brother didn't just vanish. He was planned, he was patient, and I was the one who let it happen. This happened when I was 13, during a summer trip my family took. My dad had found a rental house near a lake up in Vermont, and the listing said it was a split-living property. Basically, it was a large home that had been divided into 2 private living spaces, one on each side, with a shared kitchen in the middle. That part made my mom uncomfortable, but my dad reassured her that it would be fine because the website showed that multiple families vacationed there, and it was kid-friendly, so everything felt safe on paper. It was my mom and dad, and my 3 younger brothers and I. We arrived first and picked the left side of the house. It had 3 bedrooms, a living room, and a private bathroom. The shared kitchen had 2 entrances, one from our side and one from the other families. The other family, the Duvals, arrived a couple of hours later. That's when I started feeling weird. When they arrived, we were in the kitchen waiting to greet them, mainly for my mom so she could feel them out to see if that could comfort her more. But their daughter, Mia, who was about my age, barely spoke to anyone. She just stared. A lot. Her parents were overly polite to the point where it felt fake, too formal. They spoke slowly and smiled too widely, like they were rehearsed. As soon as we went to our side of the house, my mom was done with the place. She told me to start packing and told my dad he could never pick a place for them to vacation ever again. My dad reassured us that maybe they were shy and felt odd about sharing a place as well. Plus, my little brothers begged my mom to stay for the night. My dad made her a promise that if she didn't like it, they could leave the next day. She agreed. That first night, I couldn't sleep. I went to the kitchen to get some water, and the other door, which was the entrance to the other house, was slightly open. I walked past the door to be curious as to why it was open, and saw Mia standing in the doorway, staring into the kitchen like she'd been there for a while. When she saw me, she didn't react, just turned around and walked back into the dark. I ran back to my family's side and didn't come back out of my room until the morning. My mom decided to stay and assured me that we would be safe. The next few days were awkward. The Duvals barely interacted with us unless they had to. Mia didn't want to play or talk, and even though it was summer, she always wore long sleeves, even when she went to the lake. I eventually told my mom about the kitchen thing, and she started bringing water on our side so we didn't have to encounter Mia again. One night, near the end of the trip, my parents went out with the Duvalls to a nearby town. They left me and Mia in charge since we were the oldest. Everything was fine at first, until around 11 p.m., when I heard a noise from the kitchen. I thought maybe one of my younger siblings had gotten up for water, or was just playing around. But when I walked into the kitchen area, the other door was wide open. As I walked closer, I tripped, and on the floor was a knife. It looked as if it was placed there, perfectly centered on the tile. I started backing up into our side of the house, but before I could reach the door, Mia stepped into the kitchen. Her face was blank, and I could tell she was holding something behind her back. I asked her what she was doing. She didn't answer. Then one of my brothers came into the kitchen behind me and asked what was wrong. I told him to go to bed. Then, out of nowhere, Mia ran towards us with a knife in her hands. We ran and locked the door. We heard her screaming and laughing, telling us how badly she wanted us to die. At this point, my brother was crying, and it woke up my two other siblings. One of them texted my mom, telling her something was wrong. I could hear loud footsteps and laughter outside the door. Then silence. When my parents got back 20 minutes later, we told them everything. My parents went over to confront them, and I followed. When we walked into the kitchen area, we saw pools of blood on the floor. Their door was still wide open, and my dad went over to see if something had happened, but they were gone. Their van outside was also gone. The house was empty. No bags or electronics. They left without a word. The only thing they left behind was a page torn from the guest book, where someone had written, "Hope to see you again." We found out later that the Duvalls weren't even their real name. The rental was booked under someone else's ID, and they'd used a fake account to make the reservation. My parents tried contacting the rental company and even the police, but there wasn't much they could do. No one got hurt, and as for the blood, they couldn't find any match to it. They suspected that it was the family's blood, so they didn't treat it as a crime, just a suspicious incident. But it was obvious what they were planning.